the mouth of the South, Jimmy Hart. Hey, check out my new tag team, baby, Monty and the Pharaoh.
Hey, Jimmy, don't forget to tell them about Long Island's #1 pro wrestling broadcast.
Well, you know what, I would, but you already did it.
It's Monty and the Pharaoh.
The Monty and Pharaoh Show.
Monty and Pharaoh, bro.
Monty and the Pharaoh. The Monty and the Pharaoh.
You've got the future Hall of Famers at Rucker, Marty Jannetty, and MJ in the house, and I'm sitting here with two more future Hall of Famers, Monty and the Pharaoh. We're doing that stuff and we gonna rock it.
Monty and the Pharaoh.
It's Monty and the Pharaoh.
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 And Monty and the Pharaoh. Oh, is it Monty and the Pharaoh?
Monty and the Pharaoh.
Monty and the Pharaoh.
Hey, cut music. When you want the best in professional wrestling, Long Island, there's only one place you're gonna get it, right here.
Monty and the Pharaoh. Now, that's not just the coolest, and that's not just the best. That, my friends, is just incredible.
Monty and the Pharaoh. Duh.
Hey!
Nikita Koloff, the Russian Nightmare. And you're watching the #1 show on Long Island with Monty and the Pharaoh.
Nobody in this industry does what you guys do. I don't care what kind of mask they put on, what country they're from, or who they're married to. Nobody works the media like you guys do with professional wrestling.
All right, welcome back to Long Island's #1 pro wrestling broadcast. Monty and the Pharaoh. Let's discuss the WWE documentary that came out on Yokozuna.
You mean the one you saw and I haven't seen?
Yeah, but you know what?
Let's
That's not even the point. The point is, first of all, the WWE, we all know that they sold the network or rented the network to Peacock for 5 years.
Right. For a fortune, yes.
But I got to tell you, their documentaries are top notch.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, when these people put out these documentaries, and I'll name a few, I don't want to embarrass them, but they can't even touch these WWE documentaries.
Not on that level, no.
Any of them.
No.
But the one thing we were talking earlier.
It's the HBO quality here, you know?
Oh, absolutely.
Like, what are we saying here? You know,
I never gave a lot of thought to Yokozuna. But as I'm watching this documentary, I'm like, this guy had a lot of clout in pro wrestling.
When I look at, first of all, I always thought Yokozuna was absolutely the top of formidable. Like, when this guy got in the ring, he never had
Did you think he was Japanese in the beginning?
Of course.
I did, too. I was shocked to find out he was
Chief Jay Strongbow was an Indian. He's eating pizza. I mean, come on. I mean, whatever. He played the role perfectly. What, you thought he was Samoan?
I did not think he was Samoan.
Well, come on.
But when I found out, I was disappointed.
Disappointed? That's great.
I think I only found out a few years ago.
Right.
Actually, to be truthful.
What's cool about Yokozuna was, and he's finally getting some credit for this years later, was his agility. This guy could do some things.
Oh, yeah.
For a very, very large man. He could do some very impressive things. Yeah, Yokozuna was great.
It's actually,
I do need to see the documentary.
It's actually very sad, right? Because the WWE really tries to take care of him and make him go on a diet because he's just like, he's getting slower. They can see he's having issues. They put him with Owen Hart.
Okay.
You know, they put him with Owen Hart because he couldn't move the way he used to move.
Right.
And you're not to ruin it.
Into the role of Andre almost towards the end.
Yes,
I understand.
yes, very good.
Well, that's what happened with Andre and Haku. History repeats itself, I guess.
But, you know, for all these WWE haters or these Vince McMahon haters that say he doesn't take care of these wrestlers,
oh, come on.
It's like, boy, did they go out of their way to help this guy.
Well, why should we talk about that when we could talk about the 3 or 4 that he didn't? Let's do that.
Yeah,
you know how it works. Like, life is perfect, that he's going to 1,000% take care of everybody. Not everybody's exactly nice to him all the time either. Does that get lost?
That's true.
You know,
That's a good
Let me
point.
sue you 7,000 times because of a headlock I took.
You would think at a point
Stop
like,
it.
you know, oh, why isn't he help superstar Billy Graham? It's like, dude, you trash the guy on
yeah,
a regular
nah, man,
basis.
come
At
on,
some
it gets
point,
to-
when do you go, screw you, I'm not helping you
I'm
anymore.
amazed the two didn't step outside. Let's just get this over with already. You
Absolutely.
seem to never know when to shut up.
You're right.
What the People are unbelievable. They really
Edge
are.
is your 2021 Royal Rumble winner and winning it from the #1 spot.
Right.
Thoughts on that?
Incredible. I mean, now I have to put the horn on the cable thing. Damn it. Flipping incredible. I was amazed that, Edge went the whole way through. We did talk about it before the event happened, and we felt that it was either going to be Edge or maybe Daniel Bryan or somebody like that, but we had pretty much come up with Edge.
Right.
And a great performance. I am surprised at it. But he seems to be beelining towards Roman Reigns, and that's a sexy matchup. I think it's going to be him and Roman.
Well, they're teasing NXT, right? He was at NXT yesterday.
Edge versus Finn Balor. You'll be all over that. No, you
Well-
won't. You will not be all over that. They'd be an amazing match, quite honestly.
I would hate that match.
You'd hate every second of it.
I would hate every
Yeah, you would
second.
hate every
First of all,
second
why
of it.
would you even do that? Like,
You
it wouldn't
wouldn't.
even make any
No,
sense.
it's going to be Edge and Reigns.
So then
I
Karrion
think.
Cross came out and said, Edge, don't count on Finn Balor. If you're going to go for this belt, you're going to get me.
Yeah, don't do. Yeah. Edge will die. Cross will murder him.
Dude, Edge Roman Reigns is a hot
That's the
main
ticket.
event. Hot
Obviously,
main
that's
event.
That's the ticket.
So let's speak about ageism, right? We're older guys.
Okay, we can
right?
talk about that. Could you speak a little louder? Go on.
Goldberg, too old, but Edge, okay?
Interesting. I do think Edge looks a bit his age. Like when he won after an hour in there,
yeah.
I could see somebody in there.
But
Late
why
40s,
beat up?
you
Is
know,
it because Goldberg's been overplayed and Edge hasn't been overplayed yet?
Goldberg is an easy target, and it's true that Goldberg is slipping in the ring. Even the jackhammer, and that, by the way, that was a serviceable. He did their job.
He wasn't that great to begin with. Okay, let's get realistic.
It was in his prime. Dude, he jackhammered the Giant, known as Big Show today, back in '98 in WCW, and held him straight up in the air, 450 pounds or whatever the young Giant was, and boom! Nah, Goldberg's jackhammer used to be of legendary status.
I think it's a Goldberg thing, dude, because people are
Yes.
jacked up about Sting
Look,
being back.
look,
Really? Sting?
Goldberg is.
You were jacked up of Sting, right?
I always like to see Sting. I'm cool with that. He's going to be very limited in the ring, though. There's only so much.
Darby
he can-
Allin says he jumped the fence. He's ready to go. He was able to get over a fence, so he's ready to wrestle.
Okay. All right. Did they do the ropes too?
What about
You know those drills?
What about
They do
what
ropes?
about the crap that your boy Jericho gets?
Jericho gets it all
For
the
his
time
body
because
now.
Jericho's developing what I used to call with you back in the day. I used to call it flare chest.
Our old man body, right?
You could call it that. I think that's kind of that's kind of rough, but hey, it's a rough world.
It's a rough
It is.
world.
People aren't nice anymore.
I don't think
People
Jericho's
have
body's
keyboards
that
and just
bad,
go
to
off.
be honest with you. I think he
Are you
looks like a
kidding me?
50-something-year-old guy.
Honestly, if I woke up one morning and that's how I looked, I'd be like, "Wow, what happened to me? I rule."
I'm not sure I'm digging his tattoo though, dude. I don't like
What?
that his
Oh,
arm
the
sleeve
latest,
tattoo.
well, at least it's not a Pepsi logo or something.
So look,
Oh!
well, I think what we're realizing right now is that we're older.
Oh, I've realized
There's
that
a
for
lot
quite
of
a
older
while.
fans.
Sucks. I mean,
And the younger fans they don't want to see the older guys, I guess.
not necessarily. I think that Goldberg is an easy target, especially for the internet type fans that love the modern
Oh, they just
style
want to throw
of
their
wrestling.
little stab points in. They just want to say
People
something.
like to take shots. That's the bottom line. I don't actually enjoy doing it. I don't go on a keyboard every day and do stuff like that, but I know a lot of people do. Goldberg is definitely way beyond winding down at this point, though. Him and Undertaker almost broke each other's necks. He did struggle with the jackhammer a little bit, and I think it's about time.
Roman Reigns, Kevin Owens. We discussed earlier this week. I'm not a Kevin Owens guy. You are.
Yeah.
Is he a Hall of Famer?
Yep. Yes, he
That
is.
simple.
Yeah, it's that simple. When you look back on Kevin Owens' career, yep, he's a Hall of Famer. And for those of you who thinks that he looks like your mailman or whatever, I can't help you with that. I can't help
He
you
does
with
look
that.
like my mailman,
Kevin Owens has. If you look back and see that some of the things Kevin Owens has done, like I was saying to you so passionately during the week, he
Right.
shows up on his first appearance on Monday Night Raw, and who does he beat? John Cena.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3. Oh my God, he's the guy who kicked Vince McMahon in the face.
Yeah,
You know,
this is true.
Kevin Owens. What about the night that Triple H, turned and basically that moment where Kevin realized I'm about to win the world title because Triple H is on my side. That look that he had, his time with Y2J, that whole pairing that carried Raw, quite honestly,
Right.
for how long? Like at least a calendar year.
Yeah.
We talk about runs and how they should count. Did that run count? Those two are legendary together. You just made the list.
You just made the list.
Those two were amazing. Kevin Owens has done, and apparently behind the scenes too, Vince must love him because he's done everything they've asked him to do.
I
Top
look
shelf.
at Kevin.
Kevin and Shane.
Kevin is the
and
guy that
everybody.
gets the people, that gets the next wrestler over to the next
But
level.
he's also been a world champion.
Yes.
And a respectable one in my opinion. I mean, he did something most wrestlers would never do. He gave up the belt to Goldberg. He didn't bitch. He didn't whine. He didn't complain behind the scenes and say, "That's it, I'm leaving." He understood that these are the parts that you got to play ball with the boss. And I think he's done a good job of that, and he's done an amazing job in the ring, and he's great on the microphone.
Were you shocked that we did not get Lesnar, Cena, Punk, or Becky Lynch?
No, because
none of them.
No, because you're funny. You always say, "Not during the COVID era, not during the COVID era, not during the COVID era. There's no one in the audience. There's no one in the audience." And it's so funny. We get close to the Royal Rumble, and you're like, "Okay, Lesnar's gonna come out, and Cena's gonna come out," and you're sucked back into the fan.
Well, because we got 25,000 fans going to be at WrestleMania.
I still don't believe it. I'll believe it when I see it. And I just feel like there's no reason to pull a trigger without the fans. It's pretty silly, unless your name is Eli Manning, to bet against Tom Brady. Just historically, it's not a good idea to bet against Tom Brady. He always seems to find a way. Unless you're Eli Manning and that one hiccup with the Eagles. It's also amazing that he's about to appear in his 10th Super Bowl. Is he a robot by any chance? Like an android? Because he's 43 years old and he's about to play and lead, not come off the bench or something. He's about to lead his team to a 10th Super Bowl. He's an android. He must be. So he's got to be. How is it possible? No quarterback ever lasted this long on that level. I've never seen such amazing will from an athlete. It's ridiculous. What a leader. And I'm a Jet fan. He's tortured us for decades. I am so impressed with this. He's a cyborg.
So we want to welcome our special guest, Mr. James Terry, private investigator for pro wrestling. James, how are you? Welcome to Monty and the Pharaoh.
Hey guys, thank you so much for having me. Jake the Snake Roberts, whose sister went missing in 1979, the morning of Thanksgiving, Jolynn Smith Rogers. So I grabbed that, started looking into it, and that's what propelled me to get taken on by Jake's sister, Rockin' Robin, who was the only world champion in the family. And she took me on, and for 9 months I did nothing but dive into Jake the Snake Roberts, Sam Houston, Rockin' Robin, and all the other siblings about Jake the Snake's missing sister. And that's how I got started 6 years ago. And that led to cases over and over again being called for professional wrestling. In fact, in the underground, I've been known as the kayfabe detective or the wrestling PI. I do other cases with celebrities, but professional wrestling keeps popping up in my world of private investigating, and Jake the Snake was the first one.
Let's talk about Jake the Snake. As we know, Dark Side of the Ring, we were talking about documentaries. I believe season 3 starting, and there is one on Jake the Snake's sister. Did you have any involvement in that documentary at all? Well, Dark Side of the Ring at all with this particular episode?
The stories that Jake had put out for years was that she was murdered, there was blood all in the car. Total bull. It wasn't true at all. And I even called Jake and talked to him about that. So Rockin' Robin mentioned to these guys, listen, you need to get this guy on the phone. He knows all the wrestlers. He could find guys you can't find. And he knows more about my family and different family members and what happened to my sister than even I do. And he's worked on this at that point for almost 3 years. So 9 months straight while I was in school, and then 3 years total working with nothing but Jake the Snake Roberts, his family, and everybody. So yes, they did get a lot of their information about that one particular part, which is going to be 12 minutes of the 48-minute documentary that they will debut. And it's not only about Robin, I'm looking at some notes here, it's about Grizzly Smith and the whole family. Most people when we were growing up did not know the size of the Smith wrestling family. We knew the Von Erichs, you knew the Harts, But you didn't realize, and in my estimation, I think they're one of the top 5 wrestling families of all time. But because they didn't work under that as a family, as a clan back then, they kind of get lost. So yes, I worked very, very diligently with those people behind the scenes. But just to not capitalize on the behind the scenes and what I know about this family and these people, which nobody else in the world knows, I didn't want to go on camera, but they are going to give me credit in there for some of the information, and most of the information I found about that one part of Jake Roberts' life and when his sister went missing in '79. You know, people forget Gino Hernandez was what when he died? What was he? 26?
26 or 7. Yeah.
Yeah, he
Very
was.
young.
I mean, think about it. That's
Very young.
43 years old. Yeah, I've lived almost twice as long as him, and he seemed bigger than life.
Yeah.
And when I spoke with her, the family was terrified. They weren't really interested in having a guy like me dig it up. But I think everything that you saw on the documentary hits the nail on the head. I do not believe that he was murdered, at least not in that fashion. I think there might have been some people after him, but I do not believe that he was murdered. And basically how that ended up with the people that they interviewed are the same type of people I would have interviewed. Gino Hernandez died of an overdose. I just think that's how much cocaine he was doing. And if you listen to Gary Hart's interview or Bronco Lubitsch or any of those guys, Scandal Akbar, they'll tell you that guy was just full of cocaine back then.
Interesting.
Jake the Snake Roberts, and like a lot of people have said in his documentaries, is, in my opinion, one of the most incredible theatric performers in any sort of entertainment. You could put him up with Jackie Gleason, Johnny Carson. You could put him up against Andrew Dice Clay. Whatever type of an entertainer you were into, Jake Roberts was there. If he would have went into movies, he'd have been phenomenal. If he would have been in professional wrestling, he was phenomenal, no matter what that guy would have done. But Jake Roberts, as a human being, is one of the most disgusting human beings I've ever looked into in my life. His family is full of, well, more so than just drugs, right? So his family, and he's even admitted this on some of his interviews, is full of pedophilia. His family is full of incest. I mean, technically, Jake the Snake Roberts was born out of a rape. He's been very public about that. What I found about his sister did not stray far from that. Now, this is the only full sister in that group of people that you mentioned. Rocket Robin's a half-sister, and Sam Houston is half-brother. In fact, Sam Houston might be half human being. That guy's an absolute train wreck, but I love him. He's a nut, and he has never given up his gimmick, no matter what's happened to him. But they were all very instrumental. So Jake Roberts is 2 totally different human beings at 2 totally different times. Now, I spoke with him 3 times. Jake Roberts and I's conversations in looking for his sister did not last long, because what I had found out, and the first thing that I told him is, Jake, where the did you hear that she died and there was blood and $100,000 worth of life insurance? And basically, Jake Roberts' sister at 18 years old, for those that don't know, had already been on her 2nd child. She was 18 years old and she had a 1-year-old. She married a 50-year-old guy to get out of the house with Grizzly Smith, Jake, and the rest of them. Wow. She was kidnapped by her 50-year-old husband's ex-wife and disappeared. No body was ever found. The woman was arrested. She was indicted. She spent 10 years for kidnapping, but none in murder. But if you listen to Jake the Snake Roberts' accounts of the story, it's a lot more sensationalized. It's more gory. Jake was phenomenal with people that will believe and that he can prey on your emotions. He can tell very quick what side of the fence you're on. Are you a fan, or are you looking into this as business? I looked at this as business. Jake was no different than Rock and Robin, than their brother Joel, or any of the other people that were involved in this that had nothing to do with pro wrestling. He was just another pawn on the chessboard to me. So he was not able to work me. He was not able to con me. He was not able. I didn't want to talk about wrestling. So when I brought this up to him and I says, Jake, for 15, 20 years, you've been talking about a story about your sister being murdered and this and that. Where the f*** are you getting your information from? He was no longer Jake Roberts. He was Aurelio Smith. He was Grizzly Smith's son, the same guy that was abused and sexually molested. And that's where it started. And so him and I went into this. He had very little to do with the investigation. And when I told him that I believed his sister was possibly alive out there, he pretty much ended the phone call pretty quick because it would make him look like a liar. This was not to be too long-winded, but so you understand, this is also around the same time that Jake the Snake Roberts was hooked up with your guys' good buddy, DDP, Dallas Page, who I had several conversations with. And listen, if DDP ever watches this, if he ever wants to finish that conversation one-on-one in person, I would love to do that because I am impossible to intimidate, especially by a 60-year-old yoga instructor. So his better days are long behind him. And Jake the Snake was kind of getting out of that rut. He was with Diamond Dallas Page. They were doing a lot of this yoga stuff. I don't think he wanted to dive down the rabbit hole with me and his sister look like a liar in the documentaries as he's getting ready and shooting documentaries with and saying the same story with Dallas Page. And when I did talk to Dallas Page about this, who I thought would talk some sense into his friend and explain to him that I was pretty close to finding a missing sister alive after, 35, 38 years at the time, he wasn't interested in that. He was more interested in, I guess the right term would be, he was more interested in protecting his product of yoga and Jake the Snake being his puppet, his project to get better. Dallas Page was always, is always, and always will be a mark for his own gimmick. And I told him that on the phone. So this involves a lot of different people, but Jake the Snake is probably the smallest part of the story. His sister is a way bigger story than he was.
Did DDP threaten you? Did you at any point get any threats for your work? Were you trying to uncover
DDP never threatened me. DDP, the only thing Diamond Dallas Page did in a conversation, which, by the way, my last name is Terry. When he called me, he thought I was Hulk Hogan. So when I answered the phone, he said, Terry? And I said, yeah. He goes, Hulk? Hootie? And I says, no, this is James Terry. I've been trying to chase you down at your studio for about 6 months. We need to talk about Jake Roberts. So we got into it. Now, the way he made it sound was, listen, if this guy's sister's still alive, if Jake Roberts' sister's still alive, or you found out the truth as to how she was killed or murdered, which nobody really knows for sure, this is going to put him right back in the stupor. So the threat with Dallas Page was about his friend falling off the wagon. The last thing I wanted to do was push Jake Roberts, and he goes back and does a mound of cocaine, and he overdoses in a nightclub doing stand-up. So I had to be very careful as to how I handle this, and it was very apparent to me by the stories that Jake had said, both publicly and privately, he didn't know what the hell went on with his missing sister. And he was a referee at the time. He was not Jake the Snake Roberts when she went missing.
The way you were describing Jake behind the scenes as a person with his ability to manipulate other people, his instant recognition of of who you are and how to, are you telling me he's got Charles Manson skills? Is he closer to Charles Manson privately with the way he manipulates people than the hero we've seen on TV?
Let me tell you something, guys. Jake the Snake Roberts makes Charles Manson privately look like Screech from Saved by the Bell.
Oh, my
Jake
Lord.
Roberts is on a whole nother level. A guy like Charles Manson has one gear. He has one avenue to con you. Jake Roberts has got 10. The guy has been a professional wrestler. He's been an actor. He's been a stand-up comedian. And it's all the same shtick, right? It's all the same act. True. When I was doing Jake the Snake's case and I was looking into it, it was really Rocket Robin's case and Jolynn Smith-Rogers, the missing sister's case. When I was looking into it, every 3 or 4 days, a new woman would call me with a story about Jake the Snake, which was even more infuriating and disgusting than the next. And I followed them up with facts, and they were all true. But, Jake the Snake, there's a lot of good things about him. He's a nice, likable human being. But when he thinks he got you, when he thinks you're a mark for his gimmick, you're done. And I was never that. And I wasn't for Dallas Page either. So I don't want you to think that Dallas Page threatened me. I just told him that if he wanted to talk like that to me in person, I would have no problem driving to Atlanta where I played my college ball and meeting him face to face. He wanted nothing to do with that.
Would it be fair for me to say, is Jake Roberts the same way as his father? Did he do the same thing to his family members?
Definitely, 100%. And I'll tell you what's even interesting about Grizzly Smith. That's the same as Jake Roberts. And I'll give you a quick story here. I'm being long-winded, but there's a lot to talk about, and I'll shorten it. Grizzly Smith at the end of his life disappeared. Grizzly Smith in the early 90s opened up another territory after Vince McMahon had already obliterated all of them. It was called the 5-Star Wrestling promotion. And 5-Star Wrestling was shot, I believe, in Shreveport, Bossier City, Louisiana. It was done in a lot of the clubs up there. And there was about 18 or 20 episodes. And it was the first time that Rockin' Robin and Sam Houston ever teamed up together as brother and sister. They actually broke the kayfabe there and said, we're related. We're going to be a mixed tag. And they were some of the best workers in that industry. But if you go on YouTube, you'll see the 5-Star Wrestling promotion. And there's about 20 jackets in that library. I talked to the producers. As far as Jake Roberts and his father, I got to speak with people that weren't involved in wrestling that were related to Grizzly Smith. And one of the most interesting stories about Grizzly Smith that never made it anywhere that will line up with Jake Roberts is Grizzly Smith later in his life, and you can do a background check, you'll see this, had molested a great-granddaughter. After he had molested that great-granddaughter, he was sent to jail. He did some time in Texas. He got out, and he got Alzheimer's, and he was extremely sick and in a wheelchair. He was such a good worker. He was such a larger-than-life human being. And this is a guy a lot of us did not see growing up or know much about until Jake Roberts, that the mother of the granddaughter that he molested took her into his house during his hospice time and took care of the man that molested their daughter until he died.
Wow.
So that would be like your guys' children being molested by your grandfather, and then once he's dying, you bring him into the house, into the same home, and let him ride out his last days on earth in that same home. That's the type of magnetism that this family has when it comes to working people.
I don't know how much you know about the Bruiser Brody murder. Can you give us any thoughts on that as a PI?
You know, that's an interesting thing, because two of the things I never really do, but I have been bled into them, is do cases outside the country because of how the laws work and the people are in Puerto Rico or in Curacao or in the Dominican Republic or wherever you want to go. The Bruiser Brody murder, the most interesting part of that case, and one part of it, you guys as huge wrestling historians, fans, and people that run media would know, is the guy that murdered him. And he was murdered. The guy that murdered him's own child died within 48 hours of Bruiser Brody's murder.
Right.
I think there was a hell of a lot of stuff that went on there outside of the knife, outside of the cutting, outside of the ambulance. Everybody's got a different story. I would love to work that case, but here's the difference between Bruiser Brody and what I do. We know where Bruiser Brody is right now. We know what happened to him.
True.
How and what led up to that murder, he's gone. It doesn't really matter. The guy is never probably going to face any sort of repercussions for that. The story gets lost. What else is interesting, too, is other than that guy's child dying, and the guy that, what was his name that killed Bruiser Brody, his wrestling name?
Jose Gonzalez, the Invader.
You know what? I don't know how many people have really pushed him to do an interview. Just like finding Billy Jack Haynes for you guys, which I found a phone number for him, and he's a strange human being. And a lot of the guys, the stranger these wrestling guys are, the more truth they tell. Billy Jack Haynes with that thing in Arkansas is right on the money. He knows exactly what he's talking about. The Marty Jannetty thing, boy, I'd love to look into that. It would take me about 2 days to figure out whether or not he assassinated a bowling alley guy. Nobody in this industry does what you guys do. I don't care what kind of mask they put on, what country they're from, or who they're married to. Nobody works the media like you guys do with professional wrestling.
James, what's your thoughts, real quick, on Snuka, the Snuka situation with Nancy Argentina?
Yeah, he killed that woman.
Okay.
He killed that woman, and I think that
and
a lot
Vince
of people
McMahon
don't know.
buried it.
I've heard stories about large suitcases. Yeah. I mean, listen, guys, when you're talking about these small towns in Pennsylvania and Connecticut where they're doing house shows in towns, and I've played in these towns in the Arena Football League, like Johnstown, Pennsylvania, or Bemidji, Minnesota, or Lakeland, Florida. If you show up there, those cops, those sheriffs of those small burgs, those small towns, they run the town. That's it.
Sure.
So if you show up, there's a girl that's dead. Jimmy Snuka's larger than life. And let's not forget, right before Hulk Hogan, right around Bob Backlund, I mean, the Iron Sheik was the transitional champion. Your two biggest guys were Sergeant Slaughter and Jimmy Snuka.
Yep.
That's it.
Yep.
So it would be like The Rock today. You know what I mean? So, I think he killed that woman. He murdered her. There was other women that he had assaulted physically. I mean, the guy was jacked up on more stuff than you could possibly imagine. So are we to believe because he couldn't cut a promo, he didn't have a temper?